And the aim of the platform is, first of all, linking all CITS deployments to each other, and then also develop, share, and publish common technical specifications on CITS, and planning intensive cross-testing also to verify interoperability between different systems, and develop system tests based on the common communication profiles, focusing on hybrid communication mix, which is a combination of ETSI, ITS G5, and operational cellular networks. Our project started in November 2022, so we have been ongoing for a bit over a year now. And in total, the project lasts for 2 years, 24 months. And our consortium consists of 9 partners that are shown here on the slide. In our projects, 2 cities are involved, Antwerp and Helmond, as the project name already states, and then also the highways in between those 2 cities. And in the project, we test 2 different CITS applications. First of all, the onboard unit, which provides day 1 CITS services. We work with intelligent speed assistance that is limiting the gas pedal so that the driver cannot exceed the speed limit. This is a closed ISA system. And then also we work with a smartphone app, which also provides day 1 CITS services and speed limit information. In our project, we work with a lot of different use cases, and they are grouped into 3 different categories. First, the CITS Day 1 services in combination with ISA, so the system you saw on the slide before. Then also CITS in combination with UVAR, and CITS in combination with mobility services, among which there are light prioritization and PNR information. And within the project, we also work with different user groups. So the drivers of the cars themselves, but then also professional drivers and active road users as well. In our project, we deploy combined day 1 and day 1.5 CITS services in, as said, Antwerp and Helmond at the same time. We test and deploy onboard units for ISA and for UVAR, and we test with professional and private drivers at the same time. And then also the active users, we work with bicyclists, micromobility, and shared bike users, which test the application on UVAR and green light priority. Within the project, there's a difference within the different use cases to how much in depth we can research them. The ISA testing we do quite in depth, where in Antwerp we work with 20 vehicles that we will equip with the system. And in Helmond, we will work on a dedicated location where we will test the system throughout a week with private as well as professional drivers. Then for the slow speed zones, the UVAR for micromobility and active road users, there are certain no-go zones, no park zones, and slow speed zones already implemented in the city of Antwerp. So here we will do more of a functional evaluation if this system actually works. And then we will also hold a survey with users and pedestrians as well. So not the active users, but the pedestrians that are walking around on the Meer in Antwerp, in the shopping area there. So we will get observations and countings at the same time that we will then combine to evaluate the system and to see if there is acceptance of the slow speed zones, if we can potentially expand this kind of system, and how to also make the speed zone information available for active road users. Right now it's for micromobility, shared micromobility, but can we also expand this to private micromobility users? And for the UVAR testing, we are also looking into school zones and temporary 30 kilometers an hour areas, and tunnel height warnings, where we will do more of a functional test if this kind of system works. And also light prioritization, which we will implement on 3 different locations. One use case with, again, active road users, bikes in this case. One use case potentially this is still ongoing with cargo bikes, and one with trucks. More conceptually, we will look into truck buffering. We will conceptually work this out and test this, where we will send traffic information and smart routing to truck drivers. And then also park and ride information is also at this moment a conceptual use case. And if that goes far enough, we can also functionally test this if the system works for cars. So the main goal of the project is a cross-border and interoperability test of the services between Antwerp and Helmond, and an evaluation of the different services, CITS services, on the functional aspects, as well as the impact assessment and the user acceptance. And we will develop scalability and implementation strategies for these different services to take this to the next step. At the moment, the project, there are a few aspects of the status of the project. The technical aspects of all of the use cases are defined at the moment, and we are doing the technical validations and some data testing. The test and evaluation plan themselves have been completed. We're working on the functional testing of the mobile application, and then we're ongoing with some preparations for the tests, which are starting in January. And Sven, can I just say, I hear some buzzing in the background. I don't know if someone has their microphone on. Thank you. Yeah, so the test will start in January, and we're at this moment working on the preparations to get everything in order for this pilot. So the recruitment has started. So if you would be interested and you're driving around from time to time around Antwerp and or Helmond, and you would like to participate, you can of course join the project through this link. And as Sven already has mentioned, we will after the symposium share all the slides with you, so then you can have this link readily available. For this project, we already have a few lessons learned throughout the last year. We've seen some ambitious use cases that were defined, and when studied more in depth, they resulted in a no-go for rollout with users. So sometimes the data seemed on small scale quite good, but then eventually it turned out that the quality was not good enough for a complete rollout. Also, sometimes the cooperation with external parties took too long, or we could not come to an agreement. For example, we wanted to do also a use case for railroad crossing, where drivers would get a warning if the railroad crossing would be open, but we could not come to an agreement with an external party to arrange this, unfortunately. And sometimes also technical aspects were or are too challenging for now. Also, when we were writing the project proposal in 2021, some things were not, some interests on local level governments were not the same as they are maybe these days. So sometimes the change of the scope had to be changed. For example, that was the case for the light prioritization, where we're now working with 3 dedicated locations where we will test that use case. And also the micro-mobility use case at the Meer, like I said, in the shopping area, has already been rolled out in the meantime. So there it's more a functional and evaluation use case, more so than the actual rollout itself. Also, sometimes legal aspects and cooperation between local and governmental administrations took a long time, which have caused us some delays. So the timing for the next year then, so in January 2024, we are starting the user testing of the mobile application in both Antwerp and Helmond. In March and April of 2024, we will do the onboard unit, the ISA user testing in Helmond during that test week, like I mentioned. And then in April to May 2024, we will also do the ISA testing in Antwerp. March 2024 will be the end of the functional testing of the different use cases. So we're already working on that onto March. And then in September of next year, we expect the evaluation results. That was the introduction to our project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gwine. There's already a question for you. What data are you talking about?
I'm assuming that is related to, let's see.
Tiffany, you can unmute if you want to further clarify your question.
Yes, it's indeed on this slide. It's about the ambitious use cases. Although data seemed in lab quite good, the quality was too bad. What is the particular type of data you're referring to?
In this case, that is about the data we received from the Nationaal Wegenbestand in the Netherlands. So the general database for not only speed limits, but traffic signs in general. But for us, mostly the speed limits are very crucial in there. If that was not correct, let's say, then our ISA system that we are testing can also not give the right information to the drivers. This is something that we have already experienced in previous projects and tested it there. We noticed that at first it seemed like they had made some updates, some upgrades on their data. Sadly, that is not enough the case, at least, to actually roll this out in a way that it will add something on top of the previous project that we've done. So in this case, it is more interesting to test certain use cases in a dedicated location, in a controlled environment, where we are not dependent on that kind of data, and we can actually test the use cases themselves and if the system works, instead of having a lot of feedback on that the data was not correct, as we've seen in previous projects. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for your elaboration. And I'm pretty. I'm sorry that it's just that case, because especially now the Commission has adopted the RTTI, and especially speed data is one of the priorities here. So hopefully it will be better in the near future. But as I hear you saying, not today, still not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Sven, you wanted to comment on this?
No, I was just want to add something. I think maybe someone of the next speaker will go maybe go into further details on this, but it's still that we have noted with the testing of some of the cases and to do that, we noticed that while the getting the messages is correctly done and it's quite safe, but the content of the data or there are still some issues, and then if we dive into these databases, we see that this information is not correct, and it's not always it can be a mistake that it's correctly into the database, but if you convert it to a CITS message or another message, that there are issues on it. But we are looking at it more into detail, and I think we also will have this discussion later on during the project, also with the workgroup 5 within the C-Roads project.
Okay, thank you. We still have some time for some questions. Gwine, there is one by Eric Montserrat. Is the digital application linked to a digital navigator or integrated?
Yes, it's in the same app as a. You mean like a routing navigation?
Yes.
Yeah. It's in the same app.
Okay, Eric, I hope that answers your question. And then Giacomo Somma from Cinea also has a quick question. Whether or not the issue with the Dutch and the issue with the Dutch NDW data related to the fixed variable speed limit, is that the issue, or was the issue rather to a dynamic speed advice?
I will dive into that question later on. So
okay.
if we can wait for one response to that question, I think based on the presentation I will give after Gwine will give some answers to that.
Okay, perfect, René. Okay, with that being said, I again invite you to go to the the Slido part. So this is free text that you're supposed to type in. Well, let's have a couple of minutes. So what do you think are the most urgent aspects that need to be addressed within C-Roads as of today? Voilà, the answers are coming in. I'm getting the impression that data quality is getting important. Interesting. Business cases, that's a good one. We always run into a wall with these kind of things. Maybe we would have time at the end to discuss some of these parts. Okie doke. Great. You can still type in your answers if you want to during the next 30 minutes, let's say. So the poll is still active. In the meantime, I would invite René to share his presentation screen and then take it from there for Helmond.
Yes, I think everyone seeing my slides right now.
It's okay.
Great. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for spending the time with us this afternoon on this symposium. Welcome digitally to the wonderful city of Helmond in the south of the Netherlands. I'm going to share you some information about 3 topics today. It's about our role of Helmond in the Brainport region. I'm going to explain also a little bit what is the Brainport region. Also about the Smart Mobility Department in Helmond, about our vision, some current projects we're working on, and also about ISA. We spent a lot of years on this topic, and I also would like to take you with me on this one. Also about the questions about the data quality and the challenges we had with the NDW, but I also would like to let you know that I'm also going to present the solution that we're working on the data quality, so not only focusing on the problems. So I will keep that till the end. So hopefully you also will be with me during the presentation. So Helmond, a city in the south of the Netherlands. It's on the right side of the city of Eindhoven, the southeast of the Netherlands. We're part of a huge area that's called the Brainport region. We have several campuses over there. We have the high-tech campus in the south of the Eindhoven. We have the automotive campus in Helmond. We have a huge living lab area since quite some time between Eindhoven and Helmond, which is a national highway, which is filled with cameras. We did a lot of testing over there. We're happy to be located and situated there. It also shows the way that we handle and we face also smart mobility, and also why we are involved in this kind of project. It's for us very important to be this kind of open city. To also welcome other initiatives to test and to roll out. The city of Helmond has more than 95,000 inhabitants. We like almost 55 square kilometers. We have 67 smart traffic lights. So basically, all our traffic lights are smart traffic lights. That means traffic lights that can communicate to vehicles, but also can communicate to each other. We're also quite unique in the city in the Netherlands, actually, because we have this smart infrastructure. We're also the only city with less than 100,000 citizens that has 4 train stations, which also concludes that we have a huge mobility living lab in that sense. So we do a lot of testing with hubs, a lot of last mile solutions. We are doing some testing also with some autonomous shuttles. So a huge playground for any smart mobility professional. In the city of Helmond, we have within the Department of Mobility, we have 6 FTE persons involved with small mobility. Myself, I'm working as a project leader in that team, and together with my colleagues, we be focusing on the mission and vision that we have is actually based on 3 pillars. Is focusing on the citizens. So we also would like to improve the quality of life by developing and promoting a sustainable, safe, and efficient mobility. As a city, as an authority, we also have a role as a facilitator, where we also would like to create a thriving ecosystem that supports the growth and success of the Brainport region, including the automotive campus and its companies over there. But also as a city, the economic part is also important for us to attract new businesses, talent, and investments, which can help to boost economic growth and create jobs. We have a quite extensive European project history. Actually, this all goes back to almost 15 years ago when we started our first GLOSAR project within the Vrijlot project. It's quite some years ago. It's good to see all those developments in the field of CITS. But we're also very proud that with a former colleague Keir Blom, we were part of this European initiative. And we also could see on all the other European projects with it in the years that we focus quite a lot on the CITS area and the CITS domain, and we shifted also last years also a little bit towards the CCAM areas. But it also gives you an idea how we take this how we take small mobility as a city that serious. Very good to mention as well that recently, I think 2 months ago, we won the Urban CITS Award at the City Forum. We were the only Dutch city to win a prize, European recognition for all our efforts on the field of CITS. And we were awarded in the category of the front runner on ensuring the accessibility of jobs and services to all. So we're very happy with it, and also very happy to also share that news with you. Well, ISA, we just mentioned it already in the beginning as an introduction that ISA is also a huge part of this project. If we look to our role as the city of Helmond, also together with some other companies and organizations involved in this call, we create one of the initiators of the manifest to put ISA, the intelligent speed adaptation, a little bit more higher on the European list for us as a city. It's a very important tool to make sure that our citizens also can walk freely on the street without complaining that they see cars speeding too fast. This is a tool that also helps us making drivers aware that they're not driving too fast. So for us, it's a very important tool if we're going to change a lot of areas that are 50 kilometers per hour to 30 kilometers per hour, that we have a kind of not as a city, but more kind of enforcement tool, let's say like that. So back in 2080, the document is also public. We created a manifest that is also signed by Polis, and the document was also presented to the European Commission, and also very happy that a year later we saw this news that the ISA was also set to become mandatory across entire Europe. So then we have the European framework. Then we are happy that it's mandatory, but then actually the real work begins. Because it also stated that time in 2019 that the first vehicles in 2022, all the new models and all new vehicles in 2024 will be equipped with ISA. Well, what is ISA? Basically, is what the European regulation says. It's ISA is actually a tool that makes the driver aware through the gear or through the steering wheel, or by another way to give him an appropriate and effective feedback that they are exceeding the speed limit. This can be through 4 feedback ways. There are 4 types of ISA in that sense, as you can see on the screen. We did some extensive research on the 4th, on the speed control function, where the ISA also makes sure that the car physically will not speed too fast. So the car slows down if you exceed the speed limit. It's like if you're driving with a cruise control and suddenly when you hit the brakes, you feel it's falling out. ISA has 3 detection technologies. There's a camera that reads speed signs. It's also a digital map. For some ISA projects that we did, we used a digital speed map of the digital map from our national access point. It was the NWB, a national wegenbestand, national file of road data. We use that file as our digital speeding map to test it to see how good it is, and we also used the camera speed signs. In this project, we're also going to use number 3, the CITS, where we're also going to use the Unix RSU to send some information towards vehicles that also will receive a message. So then we have the complete package tested. Well, yeah, like I mentioned, in 2019, it was all approved. ISA will be mandatory. It starts in 2022. But how, as a city, can we accelerate the ISA rollout? How can we make sure that we don't need to wait like almost 10 years, because that's the average lifespan of a car, to see some results in our city? Together with some partners, we look into some solutions. And a possible accelerator for the ISA implementation is in our opinion, retrofitting cars, where vehicles will be equipped with an aftermarket ISA tool that has the same potential as the ISA installed right now by the car manufacturer. Actually, it's the same in this sense. The number 4 that I mentioned before, and we were really willing to investigate in that kind of retrofitting tool, to implement it in our own vehicles as a city, but also to install it in our buses, to install it in our garbage collection, but also make sure that if we have some shared mobility cars, that they also will have this kind of tools on their vehicles. So we started testing. We did 2 huge projects, one national project and a European project. You can see also here the partners involved. Those were 2 quite huge, extensive projects to test this ISA retrofit toolkit, where we have a lot of results, which I also will share with you some of them today. For the national test, we ask ourselves 3 questions. We equipped almost 30 vehicles, 30 vehicles with this ISA tool. And asked ourselves the question, like, how is the built-in ISA system perceived? Does the built-in ISA system work as intended? And is the digital and physical environment ISA ready? The last question was for us as a city very important, because we wanted to know if our physical infrastructure is as good as our digital infrastructure. Because as we mentioned also before, the ISA tool works with a traffic sign scanner, but also the digital map. If the digital map is not correct, then we know that the driver will receive wrong information. So we equipped 30 vehicles. Those vehicles were vehicles owned by private people. Some of my colleagues equipped their vehicle. We also involved a driving school in this project. They equipped almost 6 cars with this ISA feature. We equipped several road inspection vehicles with this ISA tool. And we had such huge range, a wide range of responses to that. So it's very good to have a huge wide of user group in this. So if you look to the first question, how is the built-in ISA system perceived? Well, we saw that people also answering like, hey, people can no longer speed unknowingly too fast, so the safety will increase. We also received a quote from a user that say like, yeah, there's also people thinking and they're driving behind me like, hey, this guy needs to speed a little bit up, even though I'm driving 50. They think that I'm an old guy, so they're honking the horn, so I need to speed up. So we also, as a city, we also looked into that, and yeah, that road section is a 50 road, but often people driving too fast there. We also received a comment from a user that says the system monitors speed, so I don't commit a violation and I can focus more on traffic, so I can concentrate more. It also reduces speed fines, is what a person said. So we had like a mixed opinion about the user experience of ISA. We also have a person that says like, yeah, often I received wrong information in my vehicle. If I drive on a 50 road, the ISA toolkit is scanning the 30 sign parallel to my road, so suddenly I will slow back to 30. This is not something that I really would like to receive. This is also an answer to the second question, does the built-in ISA system work as intended? Also, a person said here that a user has to disable the system quite amount of time because it resulted immediate and 100% torque in the vehicle. We also had a person that used an electric vehicle. As we all know, electric vehicles, when they brake, they do regenerated braking. So if ISA on a speed control function slows down, electric car doesn't slow down, but it does brake. So we also learned some parts of that. And yeah, quite often, especially in our city, we saw that there were many times when speed signs did not match the system. And those are physical speed signs, but also digital speed signs. This is something that we really got worried, because the question that we ask ourselves, is the digital and physical environment ready for ISA? No, it's not ready. We've got quite some work to do on that, because what we did see is, for example, in our national access point, it's called the NWB, the National Wegenbestand. We saw there a road that says it is 30 km per hour. You can drive 30 there. So service providers could get that data and think like, hey, your vehicles can drive 30 per hour. But it's not the case, because by law, physically, you can drive 50. And when you drive as a citizen of Helmond and you use a Google Maps application and you drive on the same road, then suddenly you get a speed advice of 80 kilometers per hour. So this is also for us quite shocking, because this is perhaps a very extreme point. But the digital infrastructure does not match the physical infrastructure, and citizens will receive wrong speed advice. Google Maps shows 80 because most of the people there drive way too fast. So Google thinks like, yeah, you can drive 80 there. That's also the case that Google also asks us like, yeah, give us validated data or good quality data, so we also can give good quality data and good quality advice to the persons driving the vehicle. So this is also something that keeps our thinking about, okay, how can we make sure to update our digital infrastructure, but also asking ourselves, why is the digital infrastructure actually out of order? How did it go so badly actually? What is the reason behind it? Well, what we think is, if we look to our own organization, we have more than 100 years experience in focusing on physical infrastructure. We know exactly how to place physical speed signs. We know how to guide physical traffic. We know exactly how to park our car and pay in cash to park the car. And on that point, we know exactly what our road operator needs to do. He has all his work processes under control. But what we really saw also the last 10, 13 years is the need for digital infrastructure. A lot of people asking us questions or information about digital parking, about digital loading and unloading. They also ask our questions about geofence infrastructure. All those questions came on the top of the work processes that our road operator already has. So what we also saw in our organization, but also in other cities, is that the road operator just has too much tasks extra. Where the road operator in this way, well, yeah, has way much more to do than they can actually handle. So how can we get the digital grip back as a road authority, and how can we make sure that service providers like Google Maps, they're not only leaning on floating car data that is not approved by us? So how can we get back the digital grip as a road authority is to validate. I think also we as a road operator, we should be able to validate information, and also like you see on Twitter or on the other internet, that is validated by us as a government. So also Google should trust this information that we will send to them. And this should be done by a digital road operator, a physical person sitting next to the road operator that is in charge of the physical road. We're going to look for a digital road operator to take part and to take some effort in a digital environment. As a follow-up of our European ISA project, the ISA Fit, this is also a deliverable that you could see. We decided to dive into a validated feedback loop, where we right now at this moment we equipped several of our road inspection vehicles with the ISA Fit tool, the retrofitting tool of ISA. That vehicle right now is driving to our city. That data that is collected by a vehicle is sent to a data processor. That company is called Andes. So those two files will put on the top of each other. It will be map matched. The data will be compared with the baseline file that we have. The baseline file that we have is the baseline file from our national access point. As a city authority, we will get presented the identified mutations to the road manager. So actually we will receive a green button and a red button. This car drove over that road section and it identified a difference. Is this correct or not correct? So we as a city, we can press a green button or a red button. And we can push the validated data as a bulk mutation back to the national access point. So in that matter, we are in control. We are in control of the data provided by the data collector and the vehicles that we are putting on the road. So not data that is created by floating car data, but data created by ourselves. In the future, we also would like to equip some garbage truck with that, or also some vehicles from the driving school, so we can create our own data and validate it as well. Those two data sets, so the proposal for traffic signs that we saw that are not correct or they are correct. We put a stamp on it, approved. We send it to our national access file, access point, and also the proposal for updating the road section file also will be sent to our national access point. And that way, the service provider can get the data from our national access point, and will receive, in that sense, also data that is validated by us as a city. And as an extra benefit for us as a city, we also have more control about the digital speed signs, because if we can do this in a continuous feedback loop, we're also very sure about what is standing there physically on the road. And also when my grandma turns 80 and suddenly a nephew will see the 80 sign, we know very soon that that 80 sign is not there anymore. So we should place a new one, because if a car drives 5 times next to that speed sign and it's not there anymore, our city yard would also receive a notification like, hey, you should look to that specific spot because there should be a speed sign, and we couldn't detect it anymore. So a lot of information in just 20 minutes. I hopefully also cool to give you an answer, Giacomo, on a question about the digital speeds. But this is the solution that right now we as a road operator are presenting to create a good amount of data quality, where we will have the digital grip instead of the service provider. So this is the way that we are right now working, and this is also the way that we're working very closely with our national access point, with the national access point of mobility data, with the national toegangspel mobiliteitsdata, and also with our national access point. Thank you very much for your time. So far, my presentation.
Okay, thank you, René. Let's first start with a question from Stefan Chobel. He says that the ISA directive targets 90% correctness of speed limit data. So the question is this a number that is now almost observed in our ISA testing based on the NWR, or is it insufficient for testing the C-Roads use case?
Yeah, it's a very good question. For the ISA projects we tested in the past, we decided to use the digital data from our national access point and not using the data from service providers such as HERE Technologies that are also providing the speed limit data to car manufacturers. So those speeding maps are quite accurate. But the data inside that is not validated by us as a road operator, and that is a little bit where the hassle is. We cannot guarantee or we cannot validate that data that is being used by car manufacturers. I cannot say that that vehicle data of that data set is like 90% correct. What I do know is the data we tested from the NWB is like 70-80%. So we just have like a small percentage to gain more to get those speed limits correct, but also to have the traffic signs correct, and that it will be a file that is managed by our ministry, but also validated by us as a road operator. So then we also have a very good closed chain, and also, well, we put also the service provider in a good spot because they can use those data freely.
Okay, I hope that answers the question, Stefan. There is another question by Giacomo Soma.
Yes, thanks for the explanations to my previous question. I'm wondering how much this could be anticipated before the start of the project, or related to the quality of the data. and how much actually you discovered during the project, because I mean it's a common experience of every one of us as using a car or bicycle, that speed limits on Google or whatever is your application don't match, or in your car navigation system don't match what is written in the streets. And how much this knowledge, previous knowledge of the project is related to technical issue rather than legislative enforcement, in the sense that you, for instance, the possibility from the local authority, not the national, to have a right and by legislation to make this validation step that you mentioned before, which I understand is the turning point to make a step forward. Please, thank you.
Yes, no, thank you very much for your question. It is a turning point for us, since this is a proof of concept that we are right now working on to show also other cities, other regions, and also national government that this is for us the way to go. This proof of concept will be ready by the end of January, just like 3-4 weeks. Then we have a really tested environment that we can say like, hey, this is the way to go. The results also will be placed also in this project for the testing. However, we cannot use this data set yet because it's not officially validated by us. If we will use the same data as we have for the ESA for the ESA CARSI and Helmond, then we will receive the same results and the same answers as we had in the ESA projects we did before. So that's for us is like the way to show an alternative is to find a way to validate this data, to create qualitative data, and also to show other road operators how we're going to validate that data, and also to show in vehicle in the demo that we are right now planning in March, April, to show also in vehicles that it also validated data that they will receive, that they also can act on that, and that we can close that loop in that sense.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. There's another question from Mike Bergman. In which data format is information provided in the NAP? Is it like CITS, IVM, DATEX, or another one?
Depends, I think, on what data we are talking about. The regular speed map is in shapefiles, for example. That's known for us, and that's what we use in that sense. For the CITS part, where we indeed want to have, let's say, the static or dynamic speed information, that's now in DATEX 2. But we encountered some problems in conveying it to denims, for example. The quality was not, even though it's in DATEX 2 format, the quality was not sufficient to always be able to implement it in our systems.
Okay, Mike, I assume that answers your question. Does anyone else have another question? There's a question by Antti Pasiletto. The new RTTI delegated regulation obliges traffic information service providers to include into their services the data provided by road authorities through the NAPs via rules and restrictions. Have you discussed this, for example, with Google, how they are going to accommodate this obligation to their service?
Yes, it's a very good question. Actually, we did. And how is that we have a very, very good connection with our national ministry. We work very close together with our national access point. Because actually what I just showed you is one of the first time that we also can talk about solutions. How can we validate and how can we create quality data? Google, but also TomTom and other map providers in that sense, they really would love to receive quality data, validated data. Also, Google mentioned, like, if you can provide me a validated quality data set, we are more than happy to use them. So they're already happy in that way. And of course, we also will work out together with Google through our national ministry, a kind of feedback loop the other way around. So we also could see if what we achieved and the kind of data we collected through our own vehicles, if it's also validated and also, well, yeah, it's also in line with the information Google is also providing. At the end, it's just working together to create a best user experience and to avoid that citizens of our city, but also citizens of other cities, and also for example, if you use Google Maps, to just receive okay data. You know, you don't want to see 80 on your screen and driving on a 50 road and suddenly get a fine because you thought that you can drive 80, even though we know by law, especially in the Netherlands, everything that you see through your window shield, it's law. That's why we also work very closely with our national point for driver licenses. So the driving schools also came to us to see about our experience of driving with ISA, because also mandatory right now in those new vehicles, and it's also part of the exam that you need to take when you're going to obtain your driver license. So all those new drivers that will be on the road, they also should be aware about what's coming towards them, and they also should trust the data that is placed in front of them. So that's why we are very happy that also within this project we also could share a solution from the point of view as a road operator to provide quality data together with a national access point.
Okay, I'm assuming that would answer the question thoroughly. Any other one? Anyone else has a question? If not, we can still ask them afterwards. Let's move on to the next presentation. Thank you, René. Let's now hear from Lucas van den Elsaat regarding the Antwerp use case.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to talk you through a couple challenges that we have identified as Antwerp over the years, and the actions that we have taken to work on them. So I'll be presenting or taking credit for some of the work that my beautiful colleagues have created, and I hope it gives you an idea of what's happening in the city of Antwerp. So to sketch an image, so we are a home to almost more than 500,000 people from more than 170 different backgrounds. We have a really large harbor where 1/3 of the cargo is moved by truck. And Antwerp sits in the middle of a junction of 3 TANT corridors. So many people living around understand the traffic situation around Antwerp and the ring. That same ring sees around 100,000 cars per day and 26,000 trucks. So it is the busiest piece of road in the entire Belgium. And it is saturated for 14 hours a day. So this is from a big perspective of our city. But within our city, we are working on a shift. So we want to have more active and durable forms of mobility. We've also seen that the bike has surpassed the car to work. And in the last 7 years, we've seen that there's 46% more cyclists. So that is something that is also what we are working on. One of the partners in our consortium is actually Lantis, who is responsible for this big project we're working on within Antwerp, where they try to close the ring to improve the traffic situation. But as a part of that project, many more things are being undertaken. So while they are building the new ring, the traffic still has to flow. So they also have to provide different alternatives and keep the roads open while they're building something new. For the citizens, it's important that we make it durable. So also a lot of parks are being created, also alternatives, for example, for bikes or other ways are being worked on. So this is a very big project for us as a city that will be happening for a lot of years to come. And we're already seeing big results on this project. And then The other challenge that we have is that we need to create new infrastructure for that model shift that we're trying to achieve. That's more safe for active road users on the streets. And what I talked about, this big impact of more people on bikes, we see it every year, the growing amount of people taking their bicycle. So we need to build safe and comfortable infrastructure for the bikes as well. Another challenge is that we need to keep the city accessible while we have a growing number of citizens within our city. And of course, it's now time to rethink the space that we're all using to make it more healthy, green, and to create a more comfortable urban environment. So this is what we're dealing with as a city. And some of the topics I want to discuss are looking into this. So the topics I want to talk about is active data management and behavioral change by a digital layer, the management of shared electric mobility, micromobility, and the sustainable urban logistic plan. So active data management, because we feel that there's a need for data-informed decision-making, we have created a data cell. And this data cell is actively gathering the data and finding blind spots in that data. So you can think about counting just by hand or by camera, but also a yearly survey we send out. And then the more technical things like floating car data, sensors that measure, and also data permits that we have, data from permits that we have with our the mobility providers within the city. And a big one that's very important is the effort from colleagues. So rolling out 30 zones really helped to improve our data because a lot of streets were taken under the loop. Then the data cell is sharing that real-time data with colleagues and travelers. So I have been using their data a lot in my personal work within the city. But we also share it by a routing application where our partner B-Mobile, also in the consortium, helps us with. We created APIs and we're using it for information signs, for example, during a marathon or an event. And we also want to open it up. So we are sharing this data on an open data portal and on public applications. So it looks a little bit like this. So where can I let my dog walk free? We have a city map with interests for citizens. How green is my neighborhood? We have a database for all the numerical data about how many trees are in your neighborhood, for example. And for me specifically, and for my colleagues, there's a map with all different layers of information where you can, for example, see the speed limits, what kind of signs are at hand, where the trees are. So everything you need to redesign an intersection, for example. And it's something that's being used daily. And if mistakes are found, it's always immediately communicated and changed. Then from that passive data, we also have more active data. So the question, how can I travel to the city during the marathon? I'm going to talk more about that, but we've created an application for people coming to the city and giving them the right information to get where they want to be in our city. But for companies, it could also be necessary to find data. So on our open data portal, we have different data layers. For example, like where are all the different neighborhoods bike parkings located. And this is also the portal that we use to communicate the speed map data for this project, for example. Then on that active data management, we have some future challenges. First is the preparation, monitoring, and evaluation of policy decisions. A lot of decisions are made, and we want to provide the right answers to our politicians, and this is an important step. We're looking into the use of floating car or bike data versus fixed counting devices. We really want to know what kind of traffic streams we have within the city. Then we need to be responsible towards personal data. We really need to work together with stakeholders. That's how we got as far as we are now, and we need to keep doing that in the future. And of course, to make this data usable for everyone, we need to follow up on standardization and regularization. Then this big project on the ring, but also other city works have created the need for a change, but also a behavioral change from all the people that are taking the car. We actually want them to look for other modes of transport. So what we are doing is finding ways to nudge people into different ways of moving through the city. So as you see here, for example, one planner gives you the fastest and the shortest option. We thought this is not always the right option. So as a city, you also want a specific option and show it to people. So we have created our own route planning application, also usable on your phone, that shows you the wisest option. And we're working hard on a freight route planner. So not only cars are important, but we also want to look at all the trucks that are moving into the city. So there's 5 ways that we want to nudge people with that multimodal route planner. We want to show them all the options at the same time that they can take with our own sorting logic. So we say this is what we think is the smartest route. Take a bike, take the ferry, and take a bike again. We have a lot of shared bikes. Routes that we create routes that match with our city's policy. So no cut-through traffic anymore. We offer multimodal turn-by-turn navigation because this is what a user demands from us. We also thought about different types of bicycle routes. Here, for example, you see the smoothest route. If you're driving with your kids around, you don't want all those bumps that we have in the city. And we provide positive nudges. So how many calories burned, and just saying it is the smartest, for example. So you're thinking like you are the smartest at this moment. Then something we are also focusing on during this project, it's managing shared electric micro-mobility. So at one point, we suddenly had a lot of electric scooters in our city. And it gave us a first couple issues. So an uncontrolled growth, chaotic parking, and we had no way as a city to interfere or control that. So that's when we came with the first regulations that used a permit as means of control, with a limited number of permits, a limited number of vehicles per permit, and a limited number of vehicles within the city center. And what we could do is also hold companies responsible for parking issues. This was great at first, but we found that it could be done better. So we looked for a more balanced way, a data-driven policy and evaluation, by finding the right balance, by focusing on the specific parameters. So what we did is we created geofencing, so some no-go zones, tunnels, for example, bridges, no park zones, so places where we don't want people to park their e-scooter, and slow speed zones. We created drop zones based on parking data. So here on the left, you see all the parking data we received from the companies that have permits. So they share their data with us as part of that permit. And we could say, okay, this is where we really need a drop zone, for example. And we could also monitor the amount of vehicles that they place within the city center, because we don't want too much vehicles within the city center. We also want mobility for people outside of that city center. So that's something we monitor. And we created an application for that that we're still improving as a thing for the future. And the future challenges are that we, of course, improve that platform, but we're also rolling out hub-based parking in the city center. On the right, you see drawn in drop zones. So this is where you can actually park. And around those drop zones are no park zones. So we don't allow people to park only in that specific drop zone. And in the future, we also hope that we get automatic integration of those geographic zones provided by the city into the system of the provider. So if there's an event or something suddenly happening, then we can share that immediately. Then lastly, we are also working on a sustainable urban logistic plan. So as I've talked about the city getting busier, also logistics is an important thing to focus on. And it's something we don't really have a view on yet. There is a clear need for more sustainable forms of urban logistics. So trucks in an urban context still form a big danger for people. So there's some traffic safety issues. The loading and unloading causes congestion, and congestion then also causes unwanted driving behavior. People driving past trucks on the pavement, or honking all the time. And logistics, they have a big impact on the livability of the city. Think about noise, pollution, those kinds of things. So this initiative has been taken to work on a sustainable urban logistic plan. Francisca from our consortium is also working on it. And the initiatives include many logistic stakeholders. They aggregated data per area as a starting point. I thought about a shift in time of delivery, a shift in type of vehicles, more specific space for urban logistic smart routing, business to consumer innovations, and tailored approaches. And I have to say, this plan will be finalized in the next year. All right. And the learnings from this is that the data is still kind of a blind spot. The data is scattered among different companies from different industries like e-commerce, constructions. So it's still hard to get that data together. And also involving smaller businesses in the process is difficult. For a little business to comply, it requires more effort relatively for them. What I didn't talk about, but what we're still working on, is something on roadworks and temporary closures. So we are working on I think we just finished a new program for people to communicate roadworks and closures that we'll hope to use to communicate and share further to companies. And the prioritization for public transport. And in this project, of course, the prioritization of bikes and trucks. And that's it from me. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any specific questions, I will relate them to my colleagues. And if I can answer your questions now, I will.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. If there are any questions, now's the time. We have the time, so.
Yes, Antti?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. My name is Antti Paaslehto, and I work for the Finnish Ministry of Transport and Communications. You referred in your presentation to this intersection development, and I was wondering that when your city is developing, planning the infrastructure, are you already utilizing some form of unified data model in that phase so that you can derive data from the plans and the development ideas so that you can extract it directly to the data cell so that it can be used by possible data users? So is your process, so to say, digital by default, that in the planning phase you are already using kind of data models that allow for that data that is created at that phase to be used later on?
I think if I'm answering it right, it really depends on the and do you mean by data? Do you mean like static data, or do you really mean like traffic flows and counting the amount of cyclists and cars?
Well, I was referring more, for example, the intersection development idea that if you decide to develop a certain intersection to kind of change the road signs, change the infrastructure, for example, add bicycle lanes or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
that this planning is done on a data model so that when the operator who is drafting the plan and the idea how to restructure the intersection, that data which is applicable, so which happens as it was planned, can be kind of shared immediately so that there wouldn't be a phase in between where let's say from a PDF document, someone needs to type in the data again into your data cell or to the system where the data is available for users.
No, it is true that like we all the people that are drawing out those plans, they use they do it in a data file that we have of the city, of different parts of the city, and whenever they are ready and whenever the city has given an okay for those changes, then that is used to improve the layer that we call the future. It's called the future traffic intersection. Yeah, well, the future layer. And there, all the new plans are immediately uploaded in the system. So whenever I look into that map again, I'll try to show you the exact map so you have a better view of it. So then this layer is actually already shown. So I think here you see all the different layers on the right that you can use. There are a lot, and every time something new is created, it is uploaded, and immediately I can see what plans are being executed in the next year, for example. And we have had it recently that I forgot to say, hey, this needs to be uploaded. And where the big cycling race was asking like, hey, I think there's something happening, but I don't see any plans of it on the track. Is it all right? So yes, that's. I hope it answers your question, but it is still a little bit a manual thing that needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. There are other questions. For example, with the new multimodal application, do you think people will use that in place of Google when they're navigating the city?
It's a very good question. We still try to let people use it, but on the other hand, it's also to show ourselves that it's working, and to show the other applications on the market that we as a city have the data for them that they can use, so that if they want to show multimodal information that they can ask us. So it is in that sense also a very good exercise for ourselves. And we do see that the number of users online, so we have a phone application that we're working on now, but the online version on the website is being checked a lot when people know that there's a marathon or a big event in town, because that always provides more accurate data because we provide it as a city.
In response to that, they're also saying they use the application specifically for biking, which gives more options than Google. So at least the multimodal part is really well represented there.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's another question. Who would I connect to if I want to know more about your roadworks application?
I can let you know, but there's I have a link with a person, but Mark Monte. I'm just I can give you can send me an email and I will connect you. Maybe that's the easiest way.
Okay, we'll take care of that. Of some of these answers to these questions, we'll take care of them afterwards. No problem there. Another question is, this was asked by Eric Monseron. Could you share an internet site address for what specifically? For the route planner or for?
I think
maybe it was on the slide. I don't know anymore.
Yeah, if you will share the slides,
yes,
then I know that I've added the different websites on it already. I have to say that some might be in Dutch, like maybe the city plan, but you can find them through this link.
Okay, it's even further. How many CITS cases or services do we have deployed in Antwerp?
It's a very good question. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we will try to find the answers to these questions and then also report them afterwards on the website of this project. Sven, you want to add something?
You're muted still, Sven.
The initiatives what the city of Antwerp is now doing regarding data management also for roadworks is now in this project. I think the first step to further CITS deployment. I think there are some basic cases, but this I think in my opinion I can be that I'm not completely correct, but I think this is the first time that that there is a higher focus on CITS, while in other way, yeah, there are of course some cases that they are working together with to deploy information for others to develop CITS services. But this C-Roads project, I think, is the first real step into it, I think.
Okay. So given the information we heard the past hour and a half, what types of research questions do we think we would still like to see answered? Let's say based on what we know from the C-Roads ecosystem and the way we have CITS deployments. I say we take a little time for this one. Acceptance is always an important one in this case. All right, this is overwhelming. There are a lot of questions still to be answered, I guess. I think the bottom one is also interesting, KPIs and their standardization, which I believe is one of the main things that is necessary, or that at least is being targeted by C-Roads. And again, the business cases come out. Nice, nice. So let's go on for another minute and then we move on. Okay. Okay, let's move on. We can still continue typing while the final speaker is giving his show. So I would like to invite Gary Crockford to give the final presentation. Gary, are you ready?
Just about, I think. I've just got to try and share some slides, which is always the bit that goes wrong, usually for me.
Not in this case, man. Everything here is covered.
Okay.
Voila, there you go. It works.
Try and put it in presentation mode so you can see it properly.
I see where the issues may come. Yes.
Okay. Can everybody see that?
Well, we see your... Yeah, now it's okay. Perfect.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
Takes a while to update, Sven. Okay, first of all, a bit of introductions. Gary Crockford, I'm from Department for Transport in the UK. I have the pleasure of chairing Working Group 5 in C-Roads, which is looking at what we've called digital transport infrastructure. Covers a lot of things that actually have already been discussed with some very good examples already. So I'll refer back to that as we go through. Bit of background. So C-Roads, it has this wonderful aim of harmonisation of CITS deployments throughout Europe that started back in 2016 with about 8 countries. There's about 18 there working at the moment actively on this. With the biggest piece of work is really looking at specifications, because the specifications are the bit that makes sure the standards get deployed in that harmonised way, which will allow things to work properly across borders. And it's been very successful in that, with many active business as usual deployments already in place. It's split for its work purposes into a number of working groups and task forces. I've listed them there, so I won't go through all of them. I think the most important one probably is Working Group 2, which is the one that does the donkey work in looking at services that want to be deployed and then looking at how they can be specified. So there's an awful lot of work in that area, and you can see it covers all types of communication. So if we look at hybrid communication, we're covering both ITS-G5 and cellular communications as well. We do some evaluation and assessment, which is something that came up in that last Slido. So I am the co-chair of Working Group 3 at the moment still, may not be in the future, but we'll see. And I think the latter two working groups there were added later. So the first three were right at the start of C-Roads. As we've gone through the first stage of C-Roads and gone into the second stage, it became clear that things like urban CITS was something we needed to look at separately. Different use cases, different conditions, probably different requirements. So Working Group 4 focuses very much on that, and then looks at any changes that might need to be made to specifications to ensure urban applications will work. And then there's Working Group 5, which is looking at digital transport infrastructure. Now, the reason for that really is thinking, okay, CITS is very much a service delivery piece of work, but the data has to come from somewhere, a theme that's run through all of these presentations. So what data do we need? How's that going to be used? And that was where Working Group 5 really came from. A quick look at the organisation, just to set it out in a more pictorial way so people can see where it works. The intention was always that pilots that were under the C-Roads banner would then feed information back in through the working groups. So there's a nice circular process here. We take information from pilots, we then do the work in the working groups to harmonise and then feed that back through to pilots in the form of updated specifications. And Working Group 5 is just highlighted in there. Now, what did Working Group 5 do when we started? It's a good question because this is a difficult one. Our focus was on infrastructure, the needs of that overarching digital infrastructure. This is not an exhaustive list. This is simply where we started. So it covers traffic management. I've put the HD in quotes because it's a high definition system, an interesting one. There is no true definition of what high definition map is, but certainly more defined than current mapping systems, more detail. We wanted to make sure we reflected existing standards. We've mentioned TN, ITS and Meta there. You could also include TX2 and other standards that exist. And the aim was always to go and provide some recommendation back to road operators, infrastructure operators. What can we do in this area? And obviously, anything we found here was then going to feed back into changes to specifications from C-Roads that would allow us to incorporate information we think was needed, DTI elements that would be needed in the future. So that's where we set out on our journey. Right, so how are we going to do this? Now, we very early on found out that actually not many pilots were actually doing this work. So where C-Roads normally takes that information from pilots and does work to try and harmonise them, that was quite difficult because a handful were doing it, not necessarily at the time we started work. So we decided the best thing to do, the best focus would be to try and pick some use case we thought that would be simple, straightforward and useful and everybody would be using, and then work through those use cases, looking at it as a digital layer, try and identify what elements are going to be used and what we need to consider. Also, I think there's one thing that we needed to do first of all, which took quite a while, was to come up with a definition of what we thought DTI was. So you can see there below a couple of diagrams, which are effectively data flow diagrams through both temperature change to the network and to a speed limit. And as I said, you would think these were simple use cases, and they are until you start to dig into them a bit further as a digital requirement. Where did we go? Working Group 5 outputs. I think the first two key outputs I think are shown on this slide, not necessarily in order, because the definition of DTI came first. So this was something that took quite a while to get to, because DTI is an interesting subject. It isn't just about CITS. It really is an underlying piece that covers ITS, going through connected ITS, going through to CITS, going through to CCAM, because this digital layer should be used for all of those purposes. The digitization of our, if you like, of our physical networks to create that virtual world will actually impact on all of those areas. So we had to try and come up with something that we thought covered all of those, and that just helped us guide our work. And the top diagram is where we came up with the idea of layers of data that are required. And as you can see there, we've got digital maps, digital information, and digital traffic rules and regulations. Because if you think about it, and we've talked about this in some of the earlier presentations, take a speed limit as a simple use case. If I have a speed limit on a road, there's a sign. There's also a regulation that backs up that sign. Usually the two go together. So you actually have to know that I've got a sign there, I've got a speed limit, I've got a regulation that covers it, which is correct. All those things are right. And then I can create a map that says, here's the detail. But you need all of these layers of information for some of these services to work. So there is quite a lot of elements that need to be considered in digital transport infrastructure. Right. Now, this is the more interesting diagram, I think. Having said all that, this is where we went to, which was looking at some kind of overarching domain architecture that would work. So as you can see here, we've got roads and infrastructure domain at the bottom. This works in two areas. The first one on the left is all about really gathering all that physical administrative information that needs to be digitized by a road operator or by someone working for a road operator to then create that digital infrastructure domain, which is something we're very interested in. So that's your base level of information, something, again, previous presenters have talked about, making sure you've got data there that you can use that's available to share. Then you look at some kind of data exchange domain, which should be standardized, ideally, because to make sure that data can easily be exchanged by different parties. And obviously those interfaces as well that would need to be standardized, agreed, so that everybody's working for the same playing field. It makes it much easier for everybody to create and share data at the same level. And the third domain would be the service delivery domain, where CITS fits. There are other forms of delivering information, as we all know. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. But actually, the process, we believe, is the same for everything we do. So the key bits for us is around those red areas, around getting this bit about making sure we have a good source of data, that it can be shared in a standardized, harmonized way. So therefore, service delivery functions can pick up that data and use it. But one key bit probably in there, which is when we deliver that information, is some kind of, and previous speaker said this before, some kind of validation loop. Because it's almost certain as we create this data, this digital landscape of our existing physical structures, we're not going to get this right first time round. So when we share data, we need to bring it back to ourselves and validate it through users, through other methods that have been discussed today. Because that data, as we use that data and validate it, it will improve and get better and get better. But to start with, probably it won't be where we need it to be. So we saw this very much as a key part of the work we've come up with, is describing how this process could work. Then looking a bit more detail, looking just at the maps as an example, some kind of digital update cycle, which is what I just talked about. This is just a proposal. This is something for the purposes of discussion. It's not saying this is the way it must be done, but we think this is the way. This is a good representation of the way it probably will happen, because there are going to be many parties involved in this. But the key bit again is creating the data, having that wonderful virtuous circle, creating, sharing and validating, getting that feedback loop, which is absolutely essential to make sure the data resource we're relying on is constantly updated and constantly good enough, which is really the big challenge, I think, for a lot of road operators. It was mentioned in one of the previous presenters about the amount of changes on the network. I know in the UK, I mean, we have 10,000 regulatory changes a day almost in some of our areas being carried out across the network. Keeping up to date with this is going to be no mean feat. This is quite a difficult thing to do, and therefore some of the things we'd looked at earlier, which were physical processes that we have to put in place to do this, eventually they'll get overwhelmed by the amount of data that's involved. We need to set up something that will work ideally automatically with limited intervention. But this is just a thought piece, because this is something that says we think it will work like this, but this is a point of discussion. Let's talk about it and see how it can be improved. And then the next output is looking at traffic information for CITS. And again, this is a data model of data flow. You can see here we're trying to take into account all those areas: data collection, processing, service delivery, and the user element, and say, well, okay, where are these open standards and specifications being used? Where is CITS being used? Where should the feedback loop exist? And hopefully you can see from that diagram, we've considered most of these ways of delivering a service. It's not just CITS, it can be done in other ways. And therefore we'll see that information coming back, and then we can update that information so that, again, you create this virtuous circle of data improvement. So, again, a proposal. This is not necessarily telling people the way to do it yet. This is just saying, having looked at this through a CITS lens, this is a way it could work. And because my presentation, Sven, is very quick, so I'm going to give people time back here and lots of question time. I'm going to say what the high-level recommendations could be. I'm saying could be because Working Group 5 has only just delivered its internal report to C-Roads, making recommendations for the future. So it's not by no means approved yet. But I think the key bits here, there's 4 areas I've picked out. There are some governance pieces needed here. Some kind of framework for this whole data flow, the governance, the security, the data quality requirements, all again things that have been discussed by previous speakers. Something needs to be agreed here that works in a harmonized way for everybody, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to knit all of this together across Europe and outline countries like the UK who want to drive across Europe. How does all this work? We saw a big issue here around the advisory to regulatory move. At the moment, services are advisory. That gives us quite a lot of leeway for error and mistake, which is in some ways wonderful, because that means as authorities we don't necessarily have to be absolutely correct. But at some point in the future, you could see that we are going to move away from relying on a physical sign as being a physical sign, a physical something on the network that says this is the regulation, to a digital regulation. So as we move from, to CITS and then on to CCAM, effectively the vehicle gets the information that, you're in a 30 zone, and it's going to be the digital signature that's the one that's important. Now that puts a much higher level of requirement on this digital infrastructure process. So, that needs some thinking about. So, we've already asked this question internally from the partners in C-Roads. I don't think there's a clear understanding yet of when this would happen, but I think we need to sort of put flag in the ground to say, when do we think this might be required? Because that then guides some work that we need to do. The third element, skills. Again, some good ones on display in previous speakers here. But again, I think for road operators, this is a big upskilling. That they have, as another speaker said, very good at physical infrastructure. They all know what they're doing. They've got the skills, the knowledge, the understanding. Moving into the digital age and these digital requirements, it would be great if it was just digital, but you're doing your day job and then you're adding this on top. There's a whole new level of skills, a whole new level of processes, a whole new way of thinking about how you do the job you do now. As an example, temporary changes to the network. Roadworks guys go out and put up roadworks. You need to know exactly, you need some kind of digital proof that's happening. At the moment, most of us don't. Some of us do it, but not all of us, and we don't necessarily do it in the same way. So some of those things need to be thought about. The final one, which is probably the key one in some ways, which is data. Trying to get some specifications around data and data sharing, because this is the fuel for the engine of the future. We need to make sure that data is good enough. We need to make sure that we can share it easily. Obviously, NAPCOR, we think, will be key to that across Europe, because they're looking at this anyway. So, more work with NAPCOR on those data sharing aspects is going to be essential, because, at the moment we have some good data sharing specifications. We have DATEX, we have TNITS with others that can be used. But if we can agree amongst ourselves as a community, these are the ones we're going to use, then that would be a really good step forward and help all of this process going forward. And I'm going to stop it there, Sven, and give people lots of time for questions and just say thank you for listening.
Thank you, Gary. Right off the bat, I already have a question from myself, let's say. I remember I saw on slide 9 where you have all the arrows moving around. I was noticing that for the processing part, it's relying heavily on the infrastructure side. Do you see anywhere a scheme in which processing might also be done by vehicles in the field?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I mean, I think, you know, at the moment this is again a proposal, a thought process that there is no reason why some of the processing couldn't be done other places, as long as the data sharing agreements are in place.
Okay. Okay, we have a question from Risto Kumala. He's asking, in digital infrastructure, the physical representation model of the physical infrastructure likely also includes the traffic conditions as well as environmental conditions that affect the physical infrastructure, as well as the status of the operational infrastructure, which is a question.
Well, the answer is yes. Risto will love me for saying that, but yeah, I mean, we don't try to cover everything in that report, but yes, there are. We've tried to do it in a simple way, but yes, anything impacting on the physical infrastructure and the use of the infrastructure for obviously for traffic information will have to be looked at as well. I think to be fair, at the moment, trying to get the data sources right just for the physical infrastructure is going to be a bit of a challenge. I think we need to look at those areas and decide on the importance of them, because I don't think you'll do it all at once.
Thank you. Risto, are you satisfied with the answer, or do you have any secondary thoughts?
I'm satisfied. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks,
Okay.
Risto.
Then we have a question from Bart Netten from TNO. How do you see the process to collect feedback, which was on your slide number 8? And should that be part of the maturation of the systems? Do you expect to collect that feedback from individual vehicles, like as raw data, or only from service providers, which is more aggregated, let's say?
Thanks, Bart. Great question, as always. I think it would be great to do both, ideally. At the moment, we were thinking of service providers with aggregated data as maybe a simpler route, especially since the amendments to the ITS directive would probably allow for that now. And obviously discussions are carrying on with some of those service providers as to how to share the data. But I think if you've got the route where you can collect data from individual vehicles, that would be fabulous. So that could be through OEMs, it could be through individual vehicles who you have sharing agreements with. I think that the big issue will be about the sharing agreement, because obviously some of this may be considered as private and personal data if it's an individual vehicle.
When you're saying sharing and agreements, and I think about the mobility data spaces, that should come into play somehow, right?
Yep, I would agree. I'm not sure how yet, Sven, but it should.
None of us maybe is, but okay.
Does that answer Bart's question, by the way?
Yeah. Bart, are you satisfied, or do you want to provide any other feedback?
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, I'm particularly thinking of how to make this part of your maturation of the system. I mean, it's incredibly difficult to get all the IVI messages correct, right? And
yeah,
in combination with all complex traffic rules and exceptions at local traffic situations. So it would be a good improvement, I think, if you can sort of automate it and make it part of the maturation of the ITS system, at least the information that's provided by the road operator.
Yeah, I agree, Bart. I think that would be the ideal, would be, as I said right at the start, if we can do this as effectively an automatic process of getting feedback and then feeding it back into our master digital representation of the network. So a bit like TNITS attempts to do already with looking at master maps and then just providing updates. So effectively, you've got something automatic that can check it to say, here's, it flags there's a change that then can be updated. That would be the ideal for the future.
And is that how Working Group 5 already looks at it, or is that?
It's what Working Group 5 thinks would be a great way of doing it, Bart. But at the moment, this is just a proposal. So if I'm being honest, Working Group 5 has started with a question and then it ended up with a long list of other questions we think need to be answered in order to get there. So, we haven't got the answers. We've got much better questions than we started with.
Okay, congratulations.
Thanks, Bart.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question? Okay, if not, well, Gary, most people know you in this ecosystem, so they will try to find you if they really have the urgent questions still for them.
They all know where I live. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your valuable contribution as a guest to our symposium. And with that, we have come at the end. And I think just one word from me before I hand over is after this symposium, we will update the website so that, and I will send you all a link that you can download this recording. And in the meantime, you will also get all the presentations in detail. I assume that all partners and Gary, that it's okay that we can share the presentations with the people here. So you will receive an email that will probably be next week because I'm away after tonight. So, okay, then I would give over the word to Sven for some final words.
I will keep it short. First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers, of course, especially also Gary to join this symposium, but also until now all the partners that are involved in our project. As Gary stated, we started with a few questions and we have some more questions. We could say we started with a proposal and then we started to define more use cases, and we also get more questions and more things to rely on. But I think we see that we're the creative team that really want to solve these issues, especially and now what we noticed was also the data quality and especially how cities are handling with CITS, and now they making maybe some of the first steps or the small steps into this CITS environment, and it will demand a lot of them. They have to look for quality of data. Sometimes maybe they have to reorganize even their how they're working today for a physical infrastructure. They are organized well enough, but for the digital infrastructure, it can it's an open thing. Also, things have to be rearranged. It's also challenging. So we hope at the end of this project that we, after to get some results, that we also can answer some of these questions, how to cope further with it. So thank you all. Thank everybody also to join this symposium. For the next year, we also will have some webinars and other things regarding our results, and we are willing to share our results and to discuss with you. Okay, so thank you all and have a good afternoon, and hope to speak to you soon.